1,000 metre runner and cross-country runner, won the Birmingham half this year. I wonder if he can upgrade himself to a podium finish here. Northern Ireland's two-time Olympian Kevin Seward, he's got a best of 2:10.09 just off the podium on the Gold Coast. Can he reach higher accolades? Motlokoya Thabelane of Lesotho, one of 5 sub-2:10 performers in this field. Is he the favourite? The man who always peaks for the big occasion. World Championship bronze, Alphonce Felix Simbu from Tanzania. Victor Kiplangat, second fastest in the field, 2:05.09 for 4th in Hamburg this year. And Jonathan Correa scorched to his 2:04 PB in Amsterdam last autumn. He's finished in the top 10 in 6 of his 8 marathons. A little tickle of applause for each other on the start line. A huge number of spectators have made their way to the start area. Nervous, anxious moments. De Castella's won this title a couple of times. Ron Hill of England, some of the all-time greats. Who's going to take the men's marathon title in 2022? As we saw with the wheelchair fields, a small compact group here, but no pacemakers in the major championships, and that's what makes these races all the more intriguing. Mari Yamauchi will be alongside me for the duration of this race, and I just wonder, Mara, I love looking at the CVs of these guys. This isn't about the times. We're not going to see a 2:01. We're not going to see a challenge to Eliud Kipchoge's world record. But this is a great stage for racers rather than time chasers. And I wonder whether Alphonce Felix, who got a bronze in the World Champs 5 years ago in London, this could be the perfect platform for him. A PB over the half in Ras Al Khaimah. He's gone 8 times inside 2:10. I just wonder whether he could be the man to take this title. He's certainly got the CV and he's in form.
Certainly has, Rob. PB in Milan in March this year, 2:06.20. He's really a championship performer and also very consistent. The standard of this field, as you said, it's quite compact. It's not quite the level of the World Championships or the Olympics, but to me that's a really fantastic opportunity for these athletes to win a medal. You know, it's not global, but it's nearly global with the representation across the Commonwealth. And of course, so many marathons these days effectively are time trials, but this is it's an actual race, no pacemakers, and it's up to the athletes to want to be amongst the medals, to make the running in the early stages. And good to see Wales's Dowie Griffiths there up at the front. 2:09.49 personal best for him, a fantastic PB, but some years ago now he struggled a little bit to replicate that form recently, but he trains really hard. And Team Australia also very well represented. Of course, Australia have historically been very strong in the Commonwealth Games. 2-time defending champion Michael Shelley is not here, so we will have a new champion.
Yeah, Shelley was in tears on the Gold Coast. My commentary position was about 50 yards away from the finish, and if you were watching 4 years ago, you may remember poor old Callum Hawkins of Scotland. I think he was bidding to become Scotland's first Commonwealth champion since Jim Alder in 1966, and he ran out of steam in the searingly hot conditions, and Shelley was distraught. He felt guilty at the finish line, having successfully defended his title, but there was nothing he could do for Callum Hawkins. As we watch Alphonce Felix Simbu just deciding to go to the front and set the pace early on, the Tanzanian. Now, if you're just joining us, here's a little reminder of what lies ahead for the 26 miles, 25 3/4 still left to go for these men. The race starts in the heart of the city. £2 billion redevelopment programme going on after the games have come and gone. Good legacy for the Birmingham 2022 event. The guys will run past Edgbaston shortly, home to the women's T20 cricket. Past Cannon Hill, first opened to visitors in 1873. There are plenty of undulations for these men to contend with. Round a well-known chocolate factory. I can't give the name, but no prizes for guessing if you got it right. Edging their way past back. The chocolate factory round Selly Park. This loop you're looking at now is 18k. They will do that twice, and when they have completed the 18k at the second time of asking, they will carry on and do the last 6k into the city through Gay Village up towards the Bull Ring and Centenary Square, where the gymnastics is happening, through the Jewellery Quarter, and then in towards the finish at Victoria Square. Looks simple, but I assure you the battle for gold will not be. And as if to underline the fact that the battle for gold is never straightforward, Great Britain's Dave Weir, representing England here because it's the Commonwealth Games, eventually got himself over the line. The long-term early leader had a massive advantage over John Boy Smith, but a puncture derailed his aspirations for the Commonwealth title, but he did eventually wheel himself across the finish line, showing the class and dignity of a champion. He will not go home with a gold, but he does earn the admiration of the watching crowd. Weir finishing the race despite not getting up amongst the medals in the end. Just a confirmation as the elite men go through the early stages. Here is the complete result from the elite men's wheelchair race, the first of the athletics golds to be awarded at Birmingham 2022. Victoria Square will be a hive of activity. It's already looking pretty busy. John Boy Smith, Commonwealth champion, a long way clear of Sean Frame, who had to out-sprint Simon Lawson for the silver in the end. Josh Cassidy couldn't quite make up the ground on the Englishman. So a great day for the home nation, although not quite so for Dave Weir, who finished in 7th in the end. All credit to him for completing the course. A wonderful title defence for Madison de Rosario. Back-to-back golds. Eden Rainbow Cooper at the age of 21 takes the silver. Oxley Woods finished just ahead of Dawes in 3rd, but because we only had 4, just the gold and silver awarded in the women's T53-54 marathon. All the medal presentations will come much later in the day because the men will have the course to themselves for around about an hour and a half, and the theory is that as they finish their second 18k circuit, we may get a glimpse of the elite women starting their quest for gold, silver and bronze. Well, Mara, we were talking about Alphonce Felix Simbu and maybe saying that he was the favourite and the man who produced that new PB of 2:06.20, and I don't think it's necessarily going to take a time much quicker than that to take this gold, deciding to set the early pace. And we've got him followed by Liam Adams, 31st and 24th at the last 2 Olympic Games, and two sort of chase groups, if you like. But I think Simbu will really fancy this. Many of his best performances have come representing his country rather than chasing times on the big city races, and he looks full of running, and it's an early indication of the extent of his confidence that he's not afraid to go to the front of such a big group.
Yes, that's right, Rob, and this is a championship race, which means no pacemakers. And so Simbu has decided he didn't like the slow pace off the start, so he's taking it on. So a bold decision from Simbu. He's got a 2:06.20 personal best from Milan earlier this year. And such is the incredible depth and competitiveness of men's marathon running these days that 2:06 isn't necessarily fast enough to win you a race like Berlin or London, but in championship events it's absolutely fast enough. And we catch a glimpse there of the athletes as they take their first visit to their personal refreshment stations. The table's arranged in alphabetical order by country, and the athletes can put whatever they want in their drinks there. Most of them will have carbohydrate energy drinks. And Liam Adams there representing Australia, excuse me, making a bold move at that drink station. Personal best for him of 2:10.48. He hasn't run a marathon this year, but doing the early running so far. He was 31st in the Rio Olympics, 7th in the Commonwealth Games back in 2014. World Student Games 5,000 metre run away back in 2009. He was very sporty as a child and was encouraged to try cross country. So as this men's marathon gets underway, the Commonwealth Games record for the men's marathon is still held by Ian Thompson, 2:09.12. The British athlete, that was back in January 1974, and it was the second fastest time in the world at the time. Of course, it'll...
Oh, what a race that was as we look at Adams leading. It was a brilliant duel, wasn't it? I know Grattan did brilliantly to get the bronze. It's one of the first marathons I can remember watching. Ikanga and De Castella were tearing chunks out of each other all the way around the course. And what a brilliant... I know Rob De Castella never ended up winning an Olympic medal, but what a brilliant major championship performer he was, because I think he won the inaugural Worlds in Helsinki in '83 as well, didn't he? As well as the two Commonwealth titles.
Yeah, I mean, back in the 80s, you know, these guys were churning out 209s, 208s. You know, they're really world-class athletes. And, of course, they were in the old shoes. You know, we're now in a new era of shoes with the carbon plates. So the athletes are going faster. You get a good view of the blue line there as the men go through that nice shady area. The blue line is the shortest way on the course, so any deviation from that blue line will mean they run a bit further than 26.2 miles. But Liam Adams currently in these very early stages, currently looking good, and these men will bring you their first 5k split any moment. There we go, around 15:37 or so, but we'll bring you the official split in just a moment. There we are, 15:42 through 5k for the leading men.
So he's actually running quite sensibly here. It does look like he's going really well, and it is a bold move to run off the front of a pack of the kind of calibre that's just behind him. But 15:40 odd, he's on course for what? He's 2:11-ish? Maybe high 2:10s, which is within his capability. Yeah,
and it's not super fast, so that would explain why he has gone to the front to try and push things along. They must have started off slower than that. You know, I really respect athletes doing this sort of thing. A lot of people say, oh, you know, it's crazy, he'll just get swallowed up by the group. But actually, you don't want to be dawdling along at 2:15 or 2:18 for too long. So good for him for giving it a go.
Well, we've just been talking about legendary names from the 80s. Steve Jones, the Welshman who held the world record from Chicago, I think it was 85 off the top of my head. He always maintained, if you feel good in a marathon, you should go. You should always follow your instinct. Don't kind of sit back and try and second guess what everyone else is doing. If you feel good, and you have a spell where you want to go off the front, just do it. It won't always pay off, but you should follow your instincts. And do you know what this reminds me of? One of the best marathon championship races I've ever watched, Mara, and I'm pretty sure you would have seen this as well. We were talking about it in Oregon, actually. Valerie Streneo, the Italian, in 2013, when she went straight to the front in Moscow at the World Champs in searing heat, and the only athlete who could reel her in was Edna Kiplangat. And I think it took everything out of Kiplangat to finally beat her, but Streneo followed her instinct, and it got her the World Championship silver medal.
Yeah, I mean, the same could happen here. You know, if Adams gets hauled back, he might not win the gold, but he might still get on that podium. And you know, there's a lot of Australian men before him have done just that. Exactly the same happened, Rob, in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, which I raced. The eventual winner, Konstantina Dieter, took off at about 15k. We all waved goodbye to her and said, see you at 25 miles. And she just kept the gap and won the gold medal. So, you know, if you've got the guts and the confidence to do that, good for you.
Okay, and here's a question for you. Endereba, who was the favourite for that race, said she didn't know that Temescu D2 had gone off the front. She thought for much of the last couple of miles, she thought she was winning the gold. Do you believe that? I do, yeah, because, you know, Endereba's one of these athletes who tended to sort of sit at the back of a lead group, which has its benefits. You know, you don't want to be up at the front in the wind or doing the pace making, doing any heavy lifting for anybody else. You want to just tuck in and in the first half, you know, save your energy. But the cost of that is if a move happens at the front and you're not paying attention, you can miss it. We talked in the wheelchair races about out of sight, out of mind, and you know, if Dieter was on a twisty part of the course and out of sight, Endereba would have just missed that break. So it's good to, you know, save your energy, let others do the work, but you really have got to pay attention. Now then, that group looks like we've got 7 in that lead group or so through 5k. Yep, six or 7, I think, including Korea. Yeah, 6 in that group chasing Liam Adams. I'm keeping half an eye out for Jack Rayner as well, because he was 19th in the 10,000 metres. He's not in that group at the moment, and I think he's ready to run a sub 2:10, because he's produced PBs at the 3k, 5k and the 10k. Long way to go. But watch for the Ugandan just on the left of the picture there, Victor Kiplangat. He broke his half marathon PB this year. 4th in Hamburg with 2:05.09, so he should be feeling pretty comfortable at 2:10 pace, and he does look comfortable. And the runner in the white vest and purple shorts, that is Lebenya Nkoka of Lesotho. So he has a personal best of 2:12.20 from 2016. Other than him, we have 2 Kenyans, 2 Tanzanians, 1 Ugandan in that chasing group. Adams happy to run on his own. I wonder if Rob Di Castella's watching, and the likes of Monaghetti and Mike Shelley. I wonder if they're all tuning in going, yeah, good on you, mate, get out there and have a good go. Yeah, of course, one of the great things about having a rich history in an event like this in your own country is the younger athletes like Liam Adams can be in touch with the greats who've come before them and get some tips about tactics and racing strategy and so on. Of course, they've got role models to follow as well, so Australia is the overall best performing country in the Commonwealth Games to date. And of course, the next Commonwealth Games will also be held in Australia, in Melbourne and other cities in Victoria. Australia has topped the medal table in the Commonwealth Games 13 times to date, followed by England 7 times, Canada once. Just a quick note there, good work by the camera crews. Lebenya Nkoko has just been dropped, so that chase group of 6 has become 5. Still looks like he's running okay. He was 9th back in 2006, you just mentioned Melbourne, and he made the marathon team for Lesotho back in Rio, but he's just obviously decided the pace is a tiny bit too sharp for him in that chase group of 6, which is now 5, and that looks to me as though they're not that far behind Liam Adams, who keeps checking his watch. 14 marathons, he's won Sydney a couple of times and he won Melbourne in 2018. Yet to break 2:10, but clearly deciding to run on his own terms here. And if he's in PB shape, he should be feeling okay at this pace. It's not like he's gone out in 2:05 and he's never broken 2:10. This is around about 2:11 pace, as the Tanzanian breaks ahead of that chase group and just leads them to perhaps wanting to wind this gap in a tiny bit on Adams.
And of course, Rob, this summer we've had a very busy schedule of championships. The World Championships in Oregon just finished last week, and in a couple of weeks' time we'll have the European Championships. So the marathon runners can't really double up. The track runners, of course, it's different for them, but the marathon runners have had to be quite careful in choosing which event they will go for. And it's notable that some of the Australian athletes have deliberately chosen the Commonwealth Games. Sinead Diver, who we'll see in the women's race shortly, she passed up the opportunity to run in the Worlds to try and come here and win a Commonwealth title. So Australia, very much the Commonwealth Games right at the top of their list of priority races. So Nkoka, the Lesotho athlete, just off the back of that chasing group, chasing Liam Adams.
Here's a question for you, Mara. All the years we've commentated together, I've never really had a chance to properly ask you this. As we watch Adams leading a chase group of 5, it's like he's accelerating again. It might just be deceptive because he's got a fairly short stride, which makes it look like he's got a very high turnover. Just how different does it feel? Because you did major championships for Great Britain and England, you know, with your bronze and the 10,000 in Melbourne, and you also chased times in the big city races. Just how different does it feel at the front of these races in a championship where all of a sudden you have no pacemakers?
Yeah, it's completely different. You know, in a paced city race, all you have to do is decide what pace you're going to go at. There's a little bit of negotiation with the pacemakers. You know, your race plan is kind of decided before race day. It's usually decided the day before, a couple of days before that. But in a championship event like this, you know, anything goes, and it's up to the athletes themselves to make a go of it, as Adams is doing here. And I did the same in Osaka in 2007 at the World Championships. You know, very slow race. It was very hot conditions, 30 degrees at the start and high humidity. But at about 29k, I hit the front and made my long bid for home. And sadly, it didn't work out, and I finished 9th. But you know, the athletes have to think about how if they want to win, how are they going to do it? Size up their opposition, get a handle on the course. So it's very early days. I'm not surprised to see these athletes just ticking off these early kilometres nice and comfortably, not wasting any energy. It is pretty good conditions for racing, Rob.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know, do you think Liam Adams will have had a predetermined tactic as we look at the leader on the left of picture? Those are the chasers just on the right there, that little quintet as it now is, with Nkoka having been dropped. Will Adams on the left have decided, I'm going to run, you know, high 210s or low 211s from the front, irrespective of what anyone else is doing? Or do you think he's likelier to have been in that lead pack and just got annoyed because he felt his better chance of winning was if they started out at a sensible pace rather than starting at 2:15s and then moving up? How predetermined would this move be, considering how early it's come?
Of course, I can't speak for him, but my impression is he would have decided to do this in advance. This isn't the kind of move that you would decide on the spur of the moment necessarily. And he may feel, you know, his personal best is 2:10.48. We think he's in good shape. So let's say he's in 2:09 shape. You know, his best bet for doing well in this race, getting on the podium, might be to run 2:09 and forget about what everybody else is doing. And even if he let's say he's in 2:09 shape, he runs 2:09, but he finishes 4th or 5th, he can still go away saying, I couldn't have done any better. So, you know, it's a good strategy, I think.
Fortune sometimes favours the brave. Let's see. I mean, almost half an hour on the board. No, just a little reminder about this chase group. In the middle, you've got Victor Kiplangat, the excellent Ugandan, not too far away from the podium in the World Juniors a few years ago over the 10,000 metres back in 2018. He's top 20 in the World Junior Cross when we went to Kampala. Oliotia, if you're watching in Uganda, I know you're huge fans of distance running. Alphonce Felix Simbu, sometimes known as Felix, but he's running with Simbu on his bib. He's leading the two Tanzanians there. He's just trying to close that gap down on Liam Adams. Simbu might be the favourite for this, you know. The 30-year-old, 5th in Rio, 7th last year in Tokyo. He's always there or thereabouts, and proved that when he got a bronze in London 5 years ago, just denying Great Britain's Callum Hawkins a place on the podium. Hawkins finished 4th in London and in Doha, so he is the head of the two Tanzanians, just in front of the two Kenyans. So we mentioned Kiplangat, the Ugandan, on the left. Githae, Michael Githae, was a bit of a late addition to the team for Kenya. He's run 13 marathons, most of which have been over in Asia. He won Fukuoka in December. He's a sort of sub 208 performer. Fukuoka was, I think, 207.51, and he was 10th in Tokyo in March. Talking about Githae just on the extreme left of picture here, who's now at the back of this, what was a chase group, now they're single file. Just ahead of him, completing Korea. He's the fastest in the field on paper with a 2:04.32. That was in Amsterdam last autumn. He's now just on the left of picture. The two Kenyans have been dropped, and Simbu has closed up on Adams. So the better of the two Tanzanians has bridged the gap, and all of a sudden it looks like we're entering a slightly different dynamic to this race now, where they were running all five abreast with Adams around 25 metres in front. They're single file, and Simbu, perhaps the pre-race favourite from Tanzania, has done a good job, as it seems to me he's bridging the gap, and he's taking his Tanzanian teammate and the Ugandan with him.
Yeah, I think they've sped up, Rob, because the field is now quite strung out. This isn't necessarily bad news for Liam Adams. You know, if they come onto his shoulder, they can share the hard work at the front with Adams. So Adams just needs to not panic and just keep on his own strategy, keep on his own pace. So the field quite strung out there. Just looking at the weather conditions, Rob, it's pretty good conditions for marathon racing today. It's overcast, cloudy. We're at about 9:35 a.m. local time, and the temperature is somewhere in the region of 18 to 19 degrees Celsius, with just a light southwesterly breeze. So they might get a bit of a headwind in this section of the course as they travel southwest on the first of the 18-kilometre loops.
Do you know, I was just thinking, imagine if we got another Australian-Tanzanian duel as we had with Di Castella and Ikanga back from 1982. We should mention the other Tanzanian. He's running way inside PB shape at the moment. He's just gone round the corner in third, with Kiplangat, the Ugandan, in fourth. Miscue is his name, Hamis Miscue of Tanzania, PB of 2:17. He has gone inside half an hour for 10,000 on the track, but it's his first race of 2022. Talking about the Tanzanian in the centre of your picture there, who's in third. So we've got Liam Adams on the right with the green and gold of Australia. Just watching them now, make sure they can pick up their drinks. The two Tanzanians, Alphonce Simbu Felix in second, and his lesser-known teammate Miscue in third. And that's Kiplangat, the Ugandan, who ran so well in Hamburg. He's the second quickest in the field, and the two Kenyans just a couple of seconds further back there in fifth and sixth. Nkoko was with this group, the athlete from Lesotho, but he has subsequently dropped back. So half an hour of running on the board, and we've now only got 6 athletes within half a minute of the leader. But Adams has been closed down by Simbu, and the Tanzanian so often gets it right on the big occasion.
He certainly does, Rob. So 31:06 through 10k. They were through 5k in 15:42. So if I've done my maths right, I make that somewhere 15:24.
Yep, and 31:06, Mara, is sort of mid to high 2:10s.
Yeah, so they've certainly sped up in that second 5k. So that the top 7 there, a bit strung out. Meanwhile, the chasing group are some 30 seconds or so behind. At least that was through 5K.
Yeah, as we look at Adams here, we've got the Nkoko has become detached. So you've got that little chase quintet, the last of whom is Githae of Kenya. And there he is. Good work by all our camera crews out there on the course. Then there's about another 20 seconds back to Nkoko of Lesotho, who's running in no man's land, out of shot at the moment. Then you go back to Stephen Scullion of Northern Ireland, who's in 8th, but he's a minute and a quarter behind the leaders. So this 5, or 6 if you include Githae, they're quite a long way clear. They've got almost half a minute on Nkoko back in 7th. So they are beginning to pull away from a pretty decent group.
You mentioned Kenya's Githae a moment ago, Rob. He wasn't on the entry list. He was a very late addition to this field. And of course, in the era of COVID, it can be all change on the start lists. Paul Pollock was to be representing Northern Ireland, but he's had to withdraw with COVID. So Githae, you know, coming into a marathon at the 11th hour, you can't just do it like that, you know, just do that. You have to be ready for it and have trained up for it.
Yeah, strange situation for Githae, who's just at the very back of your picture there. You can see the Ugandan, Victor Kiplangat, in 5th. So, just a confirmation that Nkoko's in that kind of no man's land position, 28 seconds off the pace. And then to Scullion and Dowie Griffiths. And, you know, it's not beyond the bounds of possibilities, Mara, you know far better than me. One or two of these guys who are maybe in 8th, 9th and 10th, if they're within a minute and a half, if they have run a conservative first half of the race, nothing to say that they might not produce a decent negative split and start picking 1 or 2 off. And suddenly you find yourself from 8th up to 6th and you've got all the momentum and you start accelerating. Funny things can happen in the last 6 to 10k of a marathon, can't they?
Absolutely, yeah. We saw it in the wheelchair races just now. Dave Weir sadly getting a puncture, and of course Paul Callum Hawkins, you know, on course for a fabulous gold medal 4 years ago on the Gold Coast. The heat took its toll. Suddenly the athletes behind him move up a position, so everything can change in the very final stages. That is Korea of Kenya, Jonathan Kiplangat Korea. Brilliant run in Amsterdam last autumn, 2:04.32 for him. Part of the NN running team based in the Netherlands. 4th in Berlin in 2019.
I always love that, Mara, when you see youngsters trying to run in the background, because it's quite hard to give a true depiction of how fast these people are going. And this is a brutal incline, by the way. You can tell by the way they're leaning into that hill. We saw the wheelchair racers finding these undulating sections quite challenging, and that's proving to be the case here for these elite runners. But, you know, the bottom line is that the averagely fit Joe and Josephine would be sprinting flat out for probably 150 metres. A few of them could manage a quarter of a mile, but not many. You know, this is for the averagely fit man or woman, this would be almost flat out sprinting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so a 2:10 marathon, which is sort of roughly what these men are doing, is a 3:05 1 kilometre split. So if you fancy going down to your local track, try running 1 kilometre in 3:05, and that equates to a 15:25 5k. So all you park runners at home watching, 15:25 for a park run. 8 times back to back, plus a little bit is what these men are doing.
Brutal. And it looks to me like there's a little probe off the front here from Liam Adams. By the way, a nod to the people of Birmingham. How good is this? I'm not sure what time it is wherever you're watching in the world, but right here it's about 9:45. Look how many people have come out from their homes in the suburbs here around Birmingham. I think the organisers have done a really good job here, Mara, because the tighter you keep those loops in the heart of the city centre, the less likely you are to get large numbers of people. When you take it past people's homes, they look outside the window and think, hang on a minute, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I've only got to walk down the bottom of my drive and I can watch world-class marathon runners going past, and a memory that they'll savour for many years to come. So a really well-supported race this morning. Just before 10 o'clock, and the streets are packed.
Yep, you're certainly in luck if the Commonwealth Games marathons go past your front door. And there we see the athletes going past the personal drink stations again. And despite it being a relatively cool day, several of them grabbing sponges there. You can see Liam Adams sponging down his legs, trying to cool off. Of course, having water on your skin or sweat on your skin, that evaporating is what cools you down. So the athletes really making sure, and also taking drinks at this early stage. You can afford to dehydrate a little during the course of a marathon. You know, you don't need to be fully hydrated as you cross the finish line because the race is over. You want to be fully hydrated at the start, but you can afford to dehydrate a little bit. And in conditions like this, they won't be sweating excessively. And of course, as you take your drink, that makes you out of breath. You know, you might get dropped by your rivals. So just want to drink just enough to get you over the line without that dreaded hitting the wall. But not too much.
I love the dad in the background trying to look nonchalantly along as if he's kind of jogging, but he'll be stopping quite soon. The guy in the shorts. Great work by the camera crew. He's getting his 15 seconds of fame, but it won't be long before he tries to look at his watch and style it out, and he won't be living with the pace of Liam Adams for too much longer. And the Australian absolutely determined to run this at his own pace.
And this course is terrific for spectators. It doubles back on itself. You know, we've got 2 loops of that first 18k loop. So if you're in Birmingham and you're not out there watching, do go out and watch. This is world-class men's marathon racing through the streets of Birmingham. And of course the 6k at the very end, very tough, hilly, lots of corners, 2 complete 180 U-turns.
And as the dad stops, Stephen Scullion goes through shot for Northern Ireland. Good range of PBs from him. Dowie Griffiths in a decent looking group there. The Welshman, he was 25th over the 10,000 metres in Glasgow. Excellent performance at the World Half in Cardiff in 2016. Brutal conditions there. One of the best pieces of distance running I've ever seen from Geoffrey Kipsang Cameror, who was pushed over at the start and ran one of the fastest times in history into near blizzard conditions in Cardiff. So Griffiths back in one of those chase groups in good company, as he was in Cardiff back in 2016. And I love, do you know what, Mara? I love it when these elite guys check their watches. It's brilliant that they take their own splits. As we watch Githae just at the back of what was that group of 5 or 6. He's still there or thereabouts, but he's become detached to the tune of around 20 or 25 metres. But did you always do your own splits or with your own watch?
I would glance at my watch, but you know, in most races there will be a clock at each of the split times. If there isn't a clock, obviously you're on your own and you have to look at your watch. But you know, in a race like this, the splits are less important. This is a race. This is about who gets across the line first. The time really doesn't matter. I mean, you want to keep a vague eye on your pace just to make sure you're not overcooking it or going too slowly. But occasionally you see athletes stopping their watch as they cross a finish line. You know, that's the time to be celebrating. You don't need to worry too much about your time at that point.
That just gives us a reaffirmation that Githae is in the background, just beneath that sign where it says Selly Oak with the train station logo. We've got the 2 Tanzanians. Good work, by the way, by Hamis Miscue just to live with this pace. I mean, Simbu Kiplangat and Jonathan Correa just ahead of Githae, who's gamely trying to battle his way back. He's doing a good job, actually. He might reattach himself to that quartet, and in fact he does so. But Miscue of Tanzania running well inside PB shape here, because he's a 2:17 man. So just talking about the Tanzanian just on the right, just on the left of your picture there. Simbu we would expect to be up here. He's just running alongside the Ugandan Kiplangat, but Miscue definitely on course for a big PB if he is able to stay with this group. But do you know, from a neutral's point of view, Mara, of course we are global and we have to be unbiased. I do like it when marathon runners are this bold this early, and there'll be a lot of people hoping that at the very least Liam Adams in the foreground gets himself a PB today, because this takes no lack of bravery to go this often off the front of a world-class field.
Yeah, I mean, championship racing can be very cat and mouse. It's not always that fast. So if you can pull out a PB in a championship race, you know, as Adams seems to be trying to do, you know, good on you. And that's really all you can do. If you can produce a good race, a personal best, you know, run as fast as you can in the shape that you're in on that day, you know, you can walk away feeling I gave it 100%, regardless of what the result is. If you get a medal, great, but if you don't, you know, you can walk away feeling you gave it everything. If you've crossed the finish line and you feel you know you had something left in the tank, then that's a bit disappointing, because this is a championship. You want to give absolutely everything. We were talking about Githae, the Tanzanian. He's 41 years old, the oldest in the field. But it's great to see Adams taking it to. I was going to use the word the big boys, but of course they really aren't. They're absolutely tiny, you know, marathon runners. Even for the men, I've met elite male marathon runners who weigh less than 50 kilos. The screens are deceptive. Actually, they look quite tall, but actually in real life, marathon runners tend to be very, very small in stature, small in body type. So he's taking it to the East Africans, who've become so dominant. You know, looking at the 2022 top list, if you look at, let's say, the top 100, you know, there'll be sort of 40 Kenyans, you know, another 40 Ethiopians. The depth is absolutely phenomenal.
They've taken, the East Africans have taken distance running to a new level. But one thing, I know you feel quite passionately about this, and I most certainly do, because I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time in East Africa interviewing the athletes. It's a misconception, isn't it, that you could go up to any Kenyan from the Rift Valley or Ethiopian from the other side of the vast Rift Valley and kind of, you know, put them out running 5 days a week with some decent shoes, and they'll become a high-level international. There are, of course, some inherent benefits of being born at altitude, but the performances from all the East Africans who we see dominating the world's top 100 are underpinned by nothing other than hard graft. There are no shortcuts when it comes to a marathon. So whilst it is advantageous to live in a land of runners, you know, nobody's gifting any East African athlete a fast time. There is blood, sweat and tears going into that effort. And when you look at the kind of training camps that Eliud Kipchoge is involved in, the lifestyle is almost monastic. It's an entire devotion and dedication in a land that reveres distance runners. So it is important to remind ourselves that these great athletes don't just pluck these performances from the trees. These are hard-earned gold, silver and bronze medals.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Rob. It's such an important point, and to reach world-class level in marathon running takes years of hard work, and it's really hard. You know, every single day you've got to get out there, come rain or shine, train hard. You've got to make sacrifices in the other aspects of your life, you know, with work, family and so on. You know, it can be quite isolating traveling to training camps at altitude and so on. And then, of course, you've got to qualify, you've got to get selected for the teams. You've got to keep your sponsors happy if you're lucky enough to have sponsors. So 15K, Liam Adams, 46.03. The leader goes through 15K. They were 31.06 at 10K. So I make that a sub 15 split, Rob.
Yep, and at 46.03, he's just edging it towards, just tickling towards sub 210, which would be a PB for Adams, but he's more than capable. He's gone 13.46 on the track for 5. He's gone 28.46 for 10. Githae has done really well to re-establish himself in that chase group. What an intriguing race unfolding. No doubt these are global pictures. We're broadcasting to you from just by the finish line in Victoria Square in Birmingham, but we're aware these pictures are going all over the world. So I wonder what people are watching live in Australia and Uganda and Tanzania and Kenya. We're not allowed to give out our various social media addresses, but you're sitting alongside myself, Rob Walker, and Mari Yamauchi. If you happen to stumble upon us on social media, tell us where you are, who you're excited to see, who you want to see winning here. No doubt the distance running community in Australia will be rightly proud of the positive way that Adams has started this race. And very importantly there, he manages to grab his hydration from the Australian support staff. And I guess when you're in these races, Mara, I mean, you know, kind of an everyday runner like me just used to, you know, grab the Lucozade or whatever from whoever was standing beside the course. But it's quite important that the specific bottles get into the right hands. When you were getting ready for a big marathon, did you ever used to practice slowing down, veering across to your right-hand side to ensure that you had the best possible chance of getting hold of your specific hydration? Did you ever practice that?
Oh yeah, all the time, especially approaching a race. I would practice catching drinks, you know, many times. And to be honest, the drink stations are a bit of a dangerous spot for marathon runners, because you know, you have to sight your bottle, grab it, try not to trip anybody up, and occasionally athletes will forget that the stations are coming up and they'll swerve across. You know, we've seen horrible accidents in the past. Josh Cassidy, one of the athletes in the wheelchair race earlier today, involved in a horrible collision a few years ago at the London Marathon with one of the female runners in the elite women's field. So you've got to stay on your feet, get your drink, stay out of trouble. And it's not the end of the world if you miss your drink, because they are every 5k typically. So it's not that long of a gap until the next one. And the race organisers will also provide a general drink station, which will have water, sponges. And there are also misting stations on this course. So had it been a really hot day, you know, a couple of weeks ago we had the highest temperature ever recorded in the UK, over 40 degrees. But fortunately for these athletes, it's not nearly so hot. It's nice and overcast, so they might not need the misting stations today. So currently the top 6 in this race pretty much together. And in 7th place through 15k was Nkoka of Lesotho, now about a minute behind these leaders. And chasing behind them was Stephen Scullion of Northern Ireland in 8th, Dowie Griffiths of Wales in 9th, another Lesotho athlete in 10th, Kabutlane, forgive me if I've mispronounced that, and he's running with Andrew Buchanan of Australia, Johnny Mellor of England, Ollie Lockley representing the Isle of Man, Kevin Seaward, Northern Ireland. So, but up at the front, it's these 6 athletes in this men's marathon.
And look at how comfortable Simba is in 2nd place, just around about 6 or 7 seconds off the pace being set by Liam Adams, hoping to add his name to a rich list of Tanzanian legends who have won this title. Kidame Shahanga, he won in 1978, and then Francis Nali for Tanzania in 2002, Samson Ramadani in 2006. The Tanzanians have got a wonderful history when it comes to this event, and he's got the proven global championship pedigree as well, with that bronze in London, very close to the podium in Rio, very close to the podium in Tokyo. Simbu, who sometimes is known as Alphonce Felix or Alphonce Felix Simbu, just in 2nd place there behind Adams, covering the moves. I think he looks very, very relaxed. And remember, we're watching a guy who has run 8 times inside 2:10, where Adams, the Australian, the brave Australian leading, has yet to break that sort of metaphorical barrier. Simbu looking very composed and very controlled in 2nd place.
Yeah, Simbu looking very good. Twice finished in the top 7 at the Olympic Games. He's very much a great, consistent championship performer. And he is improving. 30 years old, managed a PB earlier this year. So I'm just keeping a nice close eye on Liam Adams up at the front.
A lot of messages coming through, by the way. Shanghai says he's watching and listening live from Nairobi. Quite a few people tuning in from Nairobi. So what are we coming up to? Right around about midday in Nairobi. I'm sure you'll have had a few messages as well, Mara, which you can check in due course. And Jambo Jambo, if you're watching in Kenya, Oliotia, if you're tuning in from Uganda, 2 very, very proud East African nations. And hoping, from a Kenyan point of view, that your two athletes, now in third and fourth, can begin to close the gap on our long-term Australian leader. Just watching the feet of Liam Adams, he lands sort of pretty much not so much on his heels, but kind of a mid-foot striker. Were you? I just don't know. Some marathon runners manage to land on their toes. I was going out for a jog in Oregon, and I watched a Japanese marathon runner just out for a training jog, and he was on his toes, and he looked like he was floating. Were you a mid-foot striker, or were you on your toes for much of a marathon?
I was a mid-foot striker, I would say. I mean, now I'm coaching since I retired. I'm always a bit reluctant to tell people right, you've got to be a heel striker or a toe striker, because your body runs in the most natural and efficient way for it on that day. Your strength, your flexibility. So to do anything different to that is going to be less efficient. You can change your form over time, but you really need to do that through strength and conditioning drills. You can't just say, right, I'm going to toe strike. Some athletes are natural toe strikers. The mighty Haile Gebrselassie, he seemed to be always quite on his toes. But that's something that just comes naturally to some runners. And of course the new carbon plate shoes with the high stack height have changed things quite a bit as well. So Liam Adams now, quite a fast cadence for him, but he's looking pretty comfortable at the moment.
Well, I tell you what, there's generous praise on social media for the Australian. There's one chap, Justin Lagat, has sent a message in from Kenya saying, I really hope Liam Adams will be rewarded with a medal for making this an honest race. So his approach is drawing praise from high places. We've got people tuning in from Kampala as well. And one viewer watching live from New Zealand. So good evening, I think. I can't pretend to know exactly the time there, but delighted to have your company wherever you are in the world. Now, I wasn't sure they were going to have a misting station here, Mara, because I didn't think the temperatures would be hot enough. But even though the climate's kind of moderate as they get, this is them going round the roundabout at the end of the first of their two circuits of 18k. But would you, if you were in the race in this kind of weather, would you have gone under the mist, do you think?
No, I don't think I would, because well, the main reason is it wets your shoes and that can cause blisters. So if it were a really hot day, definitely yes. You want to stay as cool as you possibly can, take every sponge, every misting station available. But today, it's only somewhere like 18, 19 degrees Celsius. It's overcast. There's a light breeze, but it's not too windy. These are really good conditions for racing, and they shouldn't really be overheating. But of course, in European cities like Birmingham in July, the weather can be anything. We've had 40 degrees 2 weeks ago. So it's good that the organisers have provided the misting stations, and of course with climate change now, summer championships, wherever they are, can be very, very hot. So the athletes have to be ready, and the organisers have to be ready for any weather.
You make a really good point there, because if you were going to Tokyo, as we were last year, we knew Tokyo was going to be hot, and in fact they moved it up to Sapporo for ever such a slight decrease in the predicted temperatures. But you're right, with somewhere with a temperate climate, or supposedly temperate climate like Great Britain, you could get a day like this, or it could have been 30 degrees. If this had been 2.5 weeks ago, you're looking at a completely different environment. I sometimes think London Marathon's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you're not that familiar with the British climate, we can have lovely weather in April when I know London Marathon at the moment is in October, whilst it sort of comes back into the normal cycle post-COVID and so on. But in its normal guise of April, you can have a 25-degree day in April, or, as we've had in the past occasionally, there can be sleet on London Marathon Day. That is two completely contrasting weather cycles to try and prepare for. So I think the weather you know, unless you really love scorching hot weather, and I'm not sure there are that many marathon runners who do love it when it's quite that attritional, I think the climate's been quite kind to the runners this morning.
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, in April and the other city races in the spring and also typically in the autumn, the weather is usually cool. Occasionally you get freak hot days, but it's never more than probably about 25. But July in the summer in Europe, you know, you can have very hot days. We've got the Europeans coming up in Munich, in Germany. 2 weeks ago it was over 30 degrees every day. So you've got to be ready for anything. But fortunately for these athletes, they're very lucky. Today is great conditions for racing, and, you know, no sign of the sun, which is good too. And you were asking, Rob, do some athletes like hot weather? Well, personally, I love hot weather because it's a leveler. You know, the athletes who, in the case of the men, are 205, 206 runners, you know, some of them might have a bad day, be unable to cope with the heat. So if you are well prepared, well acclimatized, you can be right up there. Whereas, you know, on a traditional race in good conditions, you may have no chance to compete against the top athletes.
Yes, I remember you performing well in those tough conditions. And it's interesting, when you do get really, really brutal weather, you do get surprise champions, as we watch Liam Adams enjoying, hopefully, this moderate climate. I remember Luke Kibet winning. I know you were in the women's race in Osaka. Luke Kibet he won the men's in something like high 2:16s.
Yeah, I think that was the slowest World Championship winning time until the World Championships went to Doha. And then I think all the outside races were slower. But Liam Adams currently keeping up a good pace. So the men now well into the second of the two 18-kilometre loops.
And by the way, there is growing admiration from the African continent for Liam Adams. There's a guy here, Shenkan. He says, look, painfully, Adams is going to run out of gas. I think he writes from Ghana, actually. Eric Githae, I'm rooting for the Kenyans on the podium, but salute to the Australian for a great race so far. And we have our first message from Tanzania. Alistair Elias, we're watching here in Dar es Salaam. We're hoping Simbu brings glory to Tanzania. It's a shame we're not as good on the track as we are on the roads. There is a lot of talent here in Tanzania waiting to be unearthed. We are sleeping giants. So there you go.
So these leading men through 20k any minute. And we'll bring you that split as soon as we get it on our computer system. So the last 5k split through 10 to 15k went under 15 minutes. They've been speeding up since the start.
Yep, Adams has made this an honest race right from the start, which is why he's gaining admiration from people watching around the world, even from the nations vying to beat him. The fans of the Tanzanians, the Ugandans and the Kenyans, very respectful of the way Adams has grabbed the initiative and seized this race by the scruff of the neck. At the very least, we would love to see Adams duck under 2:10 for the first time. By the way, if you're a fan of the stats, the Commonwealth Games record is held by Ian Thompson when he won Christchurch back in '74. 2:09.12. 4 men have run inside 2:10. 2 of them, we've been talking about that wonderful duel between Rob De Castella and Juma Ikanga of Tanzania. Deeks won in 2:09.18 in Brisbane, and Ikanga was only 12 seconds behind him. So 1:01 or 1:01 plus bits. Yeah, this is good running, you know. This is inside 2:10 pace, not by much, but it's inside 2:10.
Yep, 15:05 for that fourth 5k split, as we see the athletes grabbing their bottles. And those were the team officials. Each team official behind the drinks table can hand the bottles to the athletes if they wish. So 15:05 through 5k. That's somewhere in the region of, so they've sped up 2:07 sort of pace. So pretty honest race so far.
And still Adams ploughs on. But he's not alone, is he? Simbu, look how comfortable. I know I keep going on about, they've just got an instinct, Mara, that Simbu is waiting to pounce. I'm not saying he's going to win the gold, but he's got a brilliant CV. He ran a really good PB for the half marathon in Ras Al Khaimah in February. I've covered that race a couple of times. What a brilliant 13.1 mile course that is over in the Middle East. And Felix now got his drink in second place, still going along behind Adams. We've got people tuning in from Iten. I wonder whether they're watching at Brother Colm O'Connell's school, St Patrick's, where they plant a tree for every champion that's come through the school, which, needless to say, could almost be a forest by now. Such is the extent of the brilliance that we get from Iten. So a very good morning, or it's lunchtime now, I think, or coming up to lunchtime. Most of the elite athletes training in Iten have probably done 25k on the beautiful orange dust roads already. Did you do much training up in Iten, or were you elsewhere in East Africa when you went over there for big mileage spells?
Actually, I did most of my altitude training in Europe and in the US, in Switzerland, in St Moritz, and also in Albuquerque and Mammoth Lakes in California. I was living in Japan for most of my elite career, so the flights to Africa were an awfully long way. So I stuck to the Northern Hemisphere altitude. You were talking about the incredible depth and prominence of the athletes from Iten, Rob. You know, for these athletes to actually get onto the Kenyan or Tanzanian team or Ugandan team is an incredible feat in itself. The depth is absolutely phenomenal. So the athletes now just approaching halfway in just a second. And a few sharp turns there as well.
I noticed early on, actually, Mara, that when Adams went round a sharper corner than this, he grabbed hold of the railing to kind of increase his momentum as he went round the bend. So, yeah, comfortably inside 2:10 pace here at halfway. And whilst for Adams, this is uncharted territory, for Alphonce Felix Simbu, the Tanzanian in second, he's got a best. He was third in Milan this year with 2:06.20, and that was his 8th sub 2:10. So we got contrasting CVs from this men. Some are already running faster than they ever have done to the halfway stage of a marathon. Others are very, very comfortable. This is Nkoko. So he's been running on his own in 7th place from Lesotho. He's a 2:12 man at his best. Didn't finish in London in 2017, but he was 9th in the Commonwealth Marathon way back in Melbourne. Still going strong. He's not that far away from turning 40. His 25th marathon. He's got 9 top 10 finishes, many of which have come in the Soweto Marathon. I've not had the chance to cover that one, but quite a few of these men have run well in the Soweto race. And this is now the back of the lead group, and full credit to Miscue of Tanzania, still hanging on to the back of that group. So if you're one of the fans watching in Dar es Salaam, a very good morning to you. You have 2 in the top group here. Miscue well inside PB shape, along with his compatriot Simbu, and the 2 Kenyans, Jonathan, sometimes referred to as Jonathan Kipleting, sometimes referred to as Jonathan Korea Kipleting. He's wearing Korea at the moment, so he's just in the middle of your picture with the late edition Michael Githae now on the right of picture. He was detached from this group, but did really well to get himself back in touch. What's your instinct here, Mara? I mean, Adams is running really, really well at the moment. He's on course for quite a big PB. Are they sort of queuing up behind him? Is it beginning to look a little ominous for the Australian? Or do you still think his bravery could be rewarded with a fabulous finish on the podium?
I don't know, it's a bit early to tell yet. I mean, he looks fine at the moment. They went through halfway in 64.34, so if you double that, you get just a few seconds inside the Commonwealth Games record of 2:09.12. But Liam Adams is personal best 2:10.48, so he's running, getting on for 2 minutes inside his personal best. And there is Scullion of Northern Ireland running in 8th place. He's some 2.5 minutes behind the leader, having a terrific race so far. looking fairly comfortable. So running on his own in 8th place, and behind, some 30 seconds or so behind him, is a group containing England's Johnny Mellor, Wales' Dewi Griffiths, the Lesotho athlete, Kevin Seaward of Northern Ireland, the other Aussie, Andrew Buchanan, Rawat Singh of India, and Ollie Lockley of the Isle of Man.
Good solid running, as you mentioned, by Stephen Scullion. Second in Dublin a couple of years ago. He was 5th in Houston, 2:11. 27th in the European under-23 cross-country just over a decade or so ago. And I was looking over the CVs of these men, and so many of them have added to their mileage by putting in some cross-country winter strength. Loads of people tuning in from all around the world, so a very good evening to a couple of people watching in Dunedin, New Zealand. So good evening to you, and I know you'll be cheering your near neighbours. Well, you probably are, hoping that Liam Adams will be rewarded for his bravery here, but it's still Simbu who's always been at the front of this little chase group that's now just become, well, it's not quite single file, but nearly, and full credit to the people of Birmingham coming out to set the tone and create the backdrop for the atmosphere as we're on to the second circuit of 18k for these men. The women, if you're marking your card, the elite women will be underway in around about 15 minutes time. We've got these races almost kind of back to back, as it were. You'll see all of it through to a conclusion, and Adams, as he has done for so long, on his own, out front by around about 10 metres or so, on course to absolutely smash his PB, as Simbu, just on the left of picture in the background, just has a little look round to check who's there in that group, whether anyone's going to dart across in front of him for the drink station. None of these men really interested, although as I say that, Simbu just grabs an open bottle of water, more to cool himself off than a proper drink, and he passes it over to his teammate, Hamis Misai. Good to see that. No drinks for either Career or Githae or Kiplangat, who's in the middle of that group. And actually Githae just motions, I think he wanted Kiplangat, he said, well, look, you're running so close to me, if you want to come through, just get on with it. And Githae moves across to the right hand side as we look at it, just to make sure that there's no chance his heels could get clipped by the Ugandan, who now has open road in front of him.
Yep, Githae is based in Japan, runs for the Suzuki team, winner of Fukuoka last December, as you said, Rob. And he's done very well so far, despite coming into the team at the 11th hour. So through 23k, Liam Adams just checks his watch, quick glance behind now. I'm just wondering, Rob, looking at Liam Adams's face, if he's starting to pay ever so slightly for this fast pace.
Yeah, he's bound to. He's in uncharted territory, Mara. He's never run this fast, never this early, and never with a group of this quality right behind him. He's absolutely going for it, and at some stage the gas tank is going to start to empty, and that's when we'll really see what he's got left over the last 10k or so. I really hope he stays in the mix, because it's quite rare, actually, isn't it, for somebody to go to the front this early. I know we mentioned it before, but it's only Straneo in 13 against Edna Kiplangat who I can remember going this early, almost right from the word go, from the gun. He's like, right, I'm grabbing this by the scruff of the neck. It's very brave, very bold, and I really hope he can find something in the closing stages.
Adams ran a half marathon, 64:49 earlier this year, and there we have the chasing group. So Dewi Griffiths of Wales, a brilliant 2:09 from him a few years back, closely followed by Johnny Mellor, England's sole representative in this men's marathon. Again, two excellent runs from him of 2:10 in recent years. Passed over for the Olympic team after suffering a bizarre injury after wearing some compression socks, and he had to sit out the trial race and see the 3 positions in the Olympics taken away. So great to see him on the start line, followed by Kevin Seaward of Northern Ireland, 4th in this race 4 years ago.
Yep, good running by him, and also a little nod to Nintendo Singh Rawat. I've commentated on him at the brilliant Delhi Half Marathon a couple of times. He's always been trying to get in there and mix it with the Ethiopians and the Kenyans. He ran 63.53 at the Delhi Half a few years ago before COVID struck. He's a 2:16 man, so he's running well, the Indian, just towards the back of that chase group, although he veers across, but just to make sure he gets a drink. And Buchanan, Andrew Buchanan, running well. He's a 2:12 man, 6 half marathons, his best at 62.50, so they're running around about PB level. Oh, that was nice. Rawat just offered to share a drink with Buchanan. I don't think there was anything untoward in Buchanan ignoring him. He just didn't see the offer. So India and Australia side by side in that chase group. And look at that. It's Uganda and Australia side by side now. Kiplangat coming forward. And now, perhaps, Adams coming under genuine pressure for the first time. He's been the one to set the tone and dictate the rhythm, but no longer. Victor Kiplangat coming through, and now Adams has the whole group for company. Can he stay with them, or has he put it out there just a little too early?
So as these lead men approach 25k, Liam Adams has been swallowed up by the group, but now he just needs to not panic. He just needs to slot in there with this group. Let them do a bit of the leading if he wants to. Just try and stay in touch with them. I've been in this situation myself. Just got to hang in there. So Liam Adams trying not to be deterred by being caught by this group. Githae, the late addition, doing very well so far. Simbu looking comfortable. So the athletes are approaching 25k and approaching the turnaround point of this second 18-kilometre lap. They will then return in a northeasterly direction towards central Birmingham, and they'll passing through Bourneville in just a few moments, and then they will have a very twisty-turny, hilly last 6 kilometres back to Victoria Square in the city centre. So Liam Adams currently trying to continue the long tradition of Australian men who've got onto the medal podium in the Commonwealth Games.
Great success enjoyed by the Australians, great success. Di Castella, Monaghetti, going way back to Dave Power in 1958. Johannes Coleman won this for South Africa back in 1938, and we've got South African fans watching in Plettenberg Bay. I've been for a run on the beach there. It's absolutely stunning. So greetings to everybody watching in South Africa. One of the great marathon victories, Josiah Tagvane back in 1996, striking gold for the Rainbow Nation in Atlanta. What a brilliant story that was all those years ago.
And we've got a half split, Rob, for the chasing group that we saw a moment ago, being led by Dowie Griffiths, and there's Stephen Scullion. So Scullion was through halfway in 67.03. He's now in 8th place, 7th.
Yes, he's just overtaken Nkoka, the Lesotho athlete who's been running in no man's land. Scullion, he looks built. He's more like a middle distance runner. Look at the size of his shoulders and his arms. Keeps checking his watch, but a very kind of good economical style and stride on the big fella.
And brilliant national record he ran in the London Marathon in 2020. That was during the middle of COVID. That was that multi-lap course around St James's Park, a tough course. 2:09.49 he ran there. Brilliant. That remains his PB now. He ran earlier this year the Rotterdam Marathon 2:14.32.
Well, I'm reliably informed there are more canals here in Birmingham than there are in Venice. Our producer was very proud of that statistic, so I'll just share that with you. More miles of canals than we have in Venice. Great place to go for a run because it's pancake flat along those canals. So what are we on now? We're by the way, just to mark your card. Now, I wonder how long that sprint will last. probably about another 100 metres maybe. Now, the women's race was due to get underway at 10:30, but that has been pushed back by about a quarter of an hour, so we'll have about another 20 minutes or so to wait before the elite women start. Hello to James Lamb in Wellington, New Zealand, who's watching our coverage and saying really enjoying the battle for PBs as well as the medals, and personal bests are so important to all athletes. You can never ask any more of an athlete than a PB in a major championship. If it comes in a final or a Commonwealth, World or Olympic marathon, all the better. So 1:17 pretty much on the nose at 25k. They're about 2:10 on the nose, maybe slowed a fraction, Mara.
Yeah, now, if I've done my sums right, that last 5k split was 15:53, which is easily the slowest of the race so far, but it is quite hilly in this section of the course. The previously slowest split was 15:24.
Yeah, so they're still running about 2:10 pace. And that looks as though Victor Kiplangat... Now, sometimes you can think that an athlete's making a break when really they just accelerated for a few seconds to ensure that they were first at the drink station. We will get a clarification as to whether he is stretching his legs or whether he was just being sensible in just a moment. It's Kiplangat leading now. Now, where is Liam Adams? Ah, he's now just been swallowed up by the back of that group. So it's a little push off the front by Kiplangat, and Simbu has responded straight away. The long-term leader, Liam Adams, now just back behind the other Tanzanian, Hamis Misai. So I don't know if this is a concerted move for gold, but it's certainly taken him off the front, and Adams is now being made to work very hard. Keeps looking over his shoulder. He's got Githae, the other Kenyan, for company. So this group has been split somewhat, and we have Victor Kiplangat and Alphonce Felix Simbu up front, Uganda and Tanzania. And I'm pretty sure, whilst we have had a few great figures from Tanzania, Shayanga winning in 78, and then Nali in 02 and Ramadani in 06, I'm not sure there's ever been a Ugandan winner of the Commonwealth Marathon. Plenty of glory on the track, and they'll be hoping for more of the same with Joshua Cheptegei. What a brilliant figurehead he's been for Ugandan distance running. He's fundraising at the moment to build a high-performance training centre in Uganda so that they don't lose too many athletes across the border into Kenya. But I'm pretty sure that no Ugandan man has won the Commonwealth Marathon. So history potentially on the line here for the Ugandans. But Alphonce Simbu still tracking. He was right behind Liam Adams, but now Adams is no longer the leader. It's Kiplangat of Uganda, and Simbu is still on his shoulder, where the Tanzanian has been all the way through the race. There he is, with a sort of languid style, little glance over the shoulder. I think he looks really good in second place.
Kiplangat of Uganda is the fastest in the field on times this year. He made a massive breakthrough at Hamburg earlier this year. Last year in Istanbul, 2:10, but he managed to get up to 2:05.09 earlier this year in Hamburg, so a big improvement from him. Trains a lot on the hills. He was the 2017 World Mountain Running Champion. That race held in Italy. So, second all-time on the Ugandan top list. And Simbu looking very relaxed at the moment.
Good running by Githae, who's suddenly come up through the field to join the two leaders. What a funny old race he's had, Mara, because at one stage he looked like he'd been dropped by that big group of six. But he's worked his way through, and the Kenyans wouldn't have added him to the lineup this late unless they thought he could produce a great race. 13 marathons, he won Fukuoka in December, has a little look over his shoulder. He's gone inside 2:08 a couple of times, so it's no faster than that, and in fact they've probably drifted out to about 2:10. But the three of them forming a useful group at the front.
Yeah, Githae has a PB of 1:02.13, and they went through halfway in 1:04.34, so pretty comfortable for him.
It's been a while since a Kenyan has won this title, and Githae's gone to the front. John Kelly was victorious in 2010 in those brutal conditions of Delhi, and before that, the legendary Douglas Wakihuri. He won in 1990 when Steve Moneghetti was second. Di Castello was 13th in his bid to go for a hat-trick of titles, having won it in 82 and 86. So 2 groups of 3 at 27k. If you're tuning in for the women, they were due off at 10:30, but that's been delayed by about a quarter of an hour. Don't worry, we will see almost all of that race unfold in its glory. Huge numbers of people have made their way to the finish here in Victoria Square, and they'll be getting pumped up as the lead men head their way in towards the finish, but that won't be for a little while just yet. Plenty of running and plenty of drama left in this race as we watch Liam Adams just on the right of picture, running with Jonathan Kiplangat, who sometimes runs with Career on his bib. They're on the right of picture with the other Tanzanian, Hamis Misai. 2 groups of 3. You can see the chasers, as they are now the chasers, in the background with Kiplangat, Githae and Simbu at the front. And how about that, Mara? I just noticed a little motion from Kiplangat in the middle. It's just beckoning Simbu on, say, right, come on. And he's looked around at him. Come on, you do some of the work.
Yeah. Dare we say that possibly the medalists could come from this 3? I never want to say that too early, but they've got a gap of
You just have. Yamauchi putting it all out there.
You know, everything can go horribly wrong in the final stages of a marathon, so it ain't over till it's over. And Kiplangat just taking a little glance over his shoulder. I'm wondering if he's thinking we've got the medals thrown up here, but Career there looking pretty comfortable, I would say. And Liam Adams, still lots of fight left in him. He's doing just the right thing, just hanging in there with the rest of these athletes, not letting himself get dropped. Misai, the oldest in the field, he's in danger of getting dropped.
And in fact, that was a great angle from which to view the athletes going through that drink station. Adams did not stop for a drink, and as a result of that, he's been able to close this gap, and having expected or feared for the brave front running he produced for the first hour and 18 minutes or so, having feared he was going to get dropped, Adams is somehow pulling himself back towards, although he's not completely reattached just yet, he's bridged that gap as they go up this really steep incline.
Yeah, Adams now really working hard to stay with the Africans. Kiplangat there hanging on to his bottle for quite a while after that last drink station. They are allowed to do that. So Kiplangat taking a good look around, seeing who's there. Was that a little smile I saw from Githae?
Well, it would be a great story for him, having been added to the field quite late on. That was the standings at 25k. Adams no longer leading, but that's how tight it was. Then there was a big gap back to Stephen Scullion, who had managed to move ahead of Nkoka, and Dowie Griffiths moving nicely inside the top 10. But this is now a really fascinating battle for the gold, silver and bronze. Good to see Indian representation in that top 15. Somebody on social media calling Tanzania a sleeping giant. Many would say the same about Indian distance running. Their growing appetite for half marathons, 10Ks and the full 26.2.
Now then, Rob, Liam Adams looks like he's rejoined that trio. So I'm wondering if they've slowed down a little bit.
I think they might have done, and he put his hand out because I think perhaps he was worried that he checked the stride of one or two of the East Africans on his left-hand side, and then Kiplangat of Uganda motioned for him to say, yeah, no problem, come through then if you fancy another go. Misai has managed to reattach himself, and remember, he's never run inside 2:17, so he could be on course for a 6+ bits. a 6-minute, maybe even a 7-minute PB. He's just at the back, and all of a sudden we've got 6 back together where we did have 2 separate groups of 3. They must have slowed.
I think they must have slowed down, yes, because we're back with 6 in that lead group now, and this is a real bonus for Liam Adams, having done all the hard work in the early stages of the race. He can now have a little bit of a breather. Of course, in this stage of the race, if you go through a bad patch, it doesn't necessarily mean your race is over. You know, you can recover if you get to another drink station, get a bit more energy on board. You can recover and get your mojo back. But this is really the toughest part of the race. You know, you're well past halfway, but you're still a long way from the finish. And Toshiko Seko, one of the marathon greats, says 20 miles is the warm-up, and then the race really gets underway.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got anywhere near the level of experience of running marathons that you have. It's certainly not at your pace, but when people ask me about training for a marathon, you know, sort of club runners and fun runners who just want to get round, I say to them sometimes, it's very easy to get your pacing wrong, and in terms of how your body feels, 20 miles is pretty much halfway. That's how much the last 6 can take out of your legs, especially with inclines like this. Great work by the camera crew here, just giving us an indication and a reiteration of just how steep these little rises are, and they will be hurting up these hills.
Yeah, at this stage in the race, the last thing you need is an incline. And we saw in the wheelchair race how tough those small hills and undulations were. So the athletes really now working up to the crest of this hill. Great to see the local residents trying to keep up. We mentioned a moment ago they're going at sort of 15:50 odd for 5k. For those of you who are keen park runners watching at home.
Oh, look at the damage Kiplangat and Simbu have been able to do here. All of a sudden, we were back together with 6, and Adams was poking his nose out at the front, and Kiplangat was saying, well, come on then, if you fancy it, have a go. Kiplangat looks over his shoulder, and he's only got Simbu for company here. The 2 Kenyans are pretty much, it's hard to tell from that angle, but they're pretty much side by side in 3rd and 4th. There they are. Githae and Korea, and there's another little gap back to Adams, and at last it looks as though the second of the Tanzanians, Miscue, just behind the Australian, has been dropped by the pace. So we've got the 2 leaders on the right of picture, the 2 Kenyans in the middle, and Adams now finds himself in 5th place, just on the left of your picture as Kiplangat glances over his shoulder just to see what damage his injection of pace has done, and it's been considerable because he's burnt off everyone apart from Alphonce Felix Simbu.
So real injection of pace now from Kiplangat. I think he's really going for it now. And we talked earlier about out of sight, out of mind. And just using that corner there, quick glance behind. So Simbu also looking very relaxed. And this is what we often see in the latter stages, Rob.
Yep, 40 minutes of running left to go for the men. We have Uganda against Tanzania at the moment, with the 2 Kenyans in 3rd and 4th. A great festival of marathon running continues as the women's race is about to get underway. Well, we're not expecting these women to tackle the world record, but maybe the games record is under threat. We've got 1 or 2 who've gone very, very quick. The Ugandan and the Tanzanian have pulled away from everybody. Liam Adams, the long-term leader now, just now finds himself down in 5th place, and he's having to hang on now. His aspirations of a medal may well have gone. This is Miscue, who's just behind him. Remember, he was running well outside his PB shape, trying to stay with that lead group. He's just behind the Australian. Here are the leading pair. Victor Kiplangat of Uganda and Alphonce Felix Simbu of Tanzania. And the Ugandan is really trying to turn the screw here on the man who stormed his way to a World Championship bronze back in Rio and was not too far, back in London, and was not too far off the podium in the last 2 Olympic marathons. 5th and 7th in Rio and Tokyo respectively, and he's tracking the Ugandan as he tracked Adams all the way through. He really wants this.
He certainly does, Rob. And the bronze medal from 2017. We've said he's a great championship performer, but he's never been on the Commonwealth Games podium, Simbu. So Kiplangat now piling on the pressure. They had a lead through 30k of some 17 seconds or so on third placed Githae of Kenya, running with Korea. Meanwhile, Liam Adams back in 5th, some 20 seconds behind at 30k. So these two now, Simbu looking very relaxed. And you can see from the trees in the background, almost no wind today, so really good conditions for racing.
Huge numbers of people gathered here at the finish, by the way, in Victoria Square. Delighted to have their company, delighted to have your company. We've had messages from people watching live. Plettenberg Bay in South Africa, Wellington in New Zealand, all over Australia cheering for Adams, and of course around Nairobi in Kenya. This is Githae in 3rd. They'll be cheering him in Iten, just as they're cheering in Kampala for Kiplangat and Dar es Salaam, hoping that it will be glory for Alphonce Felix. But this is good running by the late addition to the lineup. It looks like he's got away from his compatriot, Jonathan Kipleting, checking his watch. Now, how big's the gap back to 4th? Well, there is Korea, Jonathan Kipleting Korea. He's in 4th, with Adams tracking him in 5th, and Miscue just in the back of shot in 6th place. This is the battle for 1st and 2nd, and Kiplangat is really going for it here, checking his watch. Simbu needs to ensure this gap does not grow any further. Presumably at this stage of a major championship marathon, Mara, you're hurting. You are trying to use all your mental powers to concentrate, to not have any let up in your rhythm. It might sound weird, that, but I think concentration is the key to running a great marathon, and it's really hard to do the more the fatigue sets in.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when I've tried to calculate my splits in a marathon, I can do it perfectly fine in the first half, but into the second half, yeah, your mental capacity just starts to go as you run out of carbohydrate. So you really have to concentrate, and this is the sort of stage in the marathon where they can be won. You know, and Kiplangat really surging now. Simbu just taking his time. I mean, sometimes responding to these surges, it's best to not necessarily go with them if it's a really severe injection of pace, and just take your time and try and keep them within range, and just gradually close that gap, not to burn off too much energy.
Uganda from Tanzania and Kenya. That's the 1, 2, 3 at the moment, as the men start to think about the long run for home. In total contrast, the women's race in the very, very, very early stages, not even 10 minutes on the board. Don't worry, you won't miss a second. Sinead Diver does quite often like to go to the front. Started off as a basketball player. 12 marathons. She's won Melbourne back in 2018, a couple of second place finishes. Good running in London, 7th in 2019, 8th when we had that rather kind of strange COVID year where we had an entire day of marathon running, all the races on the closed loop in the centre of the city. The London Marathon organisers did such a good job to ensure we had any race at all that year, but it's Diver who leads. Stenson in second place, the double bronze medalist from Glasgow and the Gold Coast, and Eloise Wellings in third. So the three Australians all in a line, but everybody you would expect to feature in that group is just settling into their early race rhythm.
Rob, you mentioned earlier Jessica Stenson is aiming to become the first woman to win 3 medals in the Commonwealth Games marathon. Amazingly, the multiple medalists to date are all Australians. So the multiple gold medalists are Karen McCann, 2002 to 2000 and 2006, Lisa Martin from 86 and 90, then Jessica herself, the last 2 Commonwealth Games bronzes, Lisa Waitman and Lisa Martin as well. So Australia have been very successful in this event. I think there's only one Commonwealth Games in recent years, well, since the women's marathon started, when Australia have not been on the podium. That was in '94.
Good work for the Australians early on in their race, and fabulous work by the Ugandan. Again, I'm just double checking. I'm sure you can back me up on this. I'm 99.9% certain, Mara, no Ugandans ever won this title. We've had the likes of Scotland, Canada, South Africa. Shayanga of Tanzania won in '78 with his compatriots Nali taking the title in '02 and '06. John Kelly won in 2010 for Kenya, and Mike Shelley's won the last 2 for the Australians. Now, the men are coming towards the end of their second circuit of 18k, and we should see the women on the left-hand side. And they just went past, just embarking on the beginning of their first of 2 circuits. I'll lay one in a minute, the red arrows will go past. So Kiplangat leading then. Now, Alphonce Felix Simbu just needs to hang on a little bit. The elastic band is very definitely stretching. And the Ugandan looks the most comfortable all of a sudden. 2:05.09, that PB. 4th in the Hamburg Marathon, and he ran 60 minutes plus a few seconds in the Ghent half marathon. That's the view from the perspective of the potential silver medalist, the Tanzanian World Championship bronze medalist. Now finds himself with 8k to go, but a pretty big deficit here to try and haul back on the Ugandan. The Ugandans will be hoping for rich success with Joshua Chet.
So Kiplangat
defended his 10,000 metre title in Oregon just a couple of weeks or so ago. We will see Cheptegei in the Alexander Stadium, but that is Alphonce Felix Simbu in second place for Tanzania in this Commonwealth Marathon at the moment. Uganda leading, and Githae, the late addition to the lineup for Kenya, he is in third place. What a good run this is by the Ugandan.
Yeah, currently looking very comfortable, Rob. Just glancing at his watch there. We saw him a moment ago glancing behind. Just wondering how much of a gap he's got back to Simbu. So the men are not yet through 35k. Still a fair way to go, some 25 minutes or so.
Here's a quick clarification of the last 6k as they head their way in round Centenary Square, Arena Birmingham. That's where the gymnastics is taking place, up to the jewellery quarter where 40% of the UK jewellery is produced, and then in for the glory and the relief of the finish line at a packed Victoria Square. That's where our commentary position is, and I can absolutely assure you it is packed here. A hero's reception awaits the winner. Well, there's one of our later, or the late edition, Michael Githae, in third place at the moment. The Kenyans always know what they're doing when it comes to distance running. Mari Yamauchi came and sat down beside me this morning at 5:30 and said, "Who's Michael Githae? He's a late addition." I said, "I don't know, let's look him up." And I said, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up featuring. So he is a man who's done most of his running over in Japan, as we've already clarified. Just a reminder, if you've joined us, pretty consistent around about the sort of 2:08 mark. His compatriot, the very fast Jonathan Kiplete in Korea, is just in the distance there. He's in 4th place with Liam Adams just behind him. Really hoping that Adams can break that PB of 2:10.48, the early leader. But we're watching Githae, who's in 3rd. Simbu is just up ahead in 2nd for Tanzania, with Victor Kiplangat hoping to become the first Ugandan man to take this title.
I should, of course, have known everything about Githae, Rob, because he's the current champion of the Fukuoka Marathon from December last year. Fukuoka, of course, was the unofficial World Championships for men before the actual World Championships got going back in the early 80s. And always attracts a world-class field, so Githae very much deserves his place on the team, even though it was a bit last minute. Personal best of 2:07.51 for him, so currently in 3rd place. But there is the leader, Victor Kiplangat of Uganda. 2:05.09 personal best for him, so he's running somewhat outside that, but looking very comfortable at the moment. He's a world mountain running champion back in 2017, so the hills here, I imagine, will have been no great problem for him. And trains with the mighty Cheptegei. So there is Githae, currently in 3rd place. Just takes a little glance behind him. Through 30k, he had a gap back to, well, he was running with Korea at 30k. So as soon as we get them through 35k. So Kiplangat now through 35k in 1:47.09. Some 18 seconds or so ahead of Simbu.
1:47 then at 35. Yep, around about inside 2:10ish. As we watch Githae in 3rd place. Simbu in 2nd, Githae now over a minute adrift. What a great story this would be for Ugandan distance running. Stephen Kiprotich, of course, won the London Olympic title in 2012 and in Moscow in the searing heat the following year. So Ugandan men have won the World Marathon title, the Olympic Marathon title, but never the Commonwealth crown. Is that void in their decorated history about to be filled by Victor Kiplangat of Uganda? He's given himself a brilliant platform here. Adams is in 5th, but we're watching the leader, Victor Kiplangat, who's managed to get himself 20 seconds or so on Alphonce Felix Simbu of Tanzania, who's got one hand on a silver to upgrade his World Championship bronze. Big group still together with the elite women's race. Looks like, is that Sinead Diver still out front? They were 1, 2, 3 all in a row, and Diver quite happy to set the early rhythm. Do you know what, Mara? I think Diver really wants this. I mean, you know, it's incredible that she made the top 10 of the Olympics at the age of 44 and now 45. She will be recognising that she can't stay at this level for too much longer, and maybe this is her best chance to get herself a major championship medal, and she's put all her eggs in this Commonwealth basket.
She certainly has, yes. Passed up the opportunity of racing in the World Championships to run this Commonwealth Games. And as you say, 45 years old now, so in another 4 years, at age 49, that might be a bit of a push. So, yeah, I think she's definitely up there, certainly for the podium and possibly to win outright.
Well, a long way left to go for this group. Really hope you've been enjoying these races. If you've been with us all the way through, superb. You've done the viewing marathon. Loads of people watching all around the world. Still, these messages are coming through from Nairobi in Kenya, from Iten in Kenya, from Auckland in New Zealand. And of course, the Ugandans getting very excited, not just in Kampala, but in Jinja as well, on the banks of the River Nile. Mara has clarified that the Australian women have got a wonderful history when it comes to the Commonwealth Marathon, and they may well do so again here with 3 in contention in that big group. Now, back to the men. Going through Gay Village into this last 6k, having done the 2 circuits of 18 kilometres. Proud host city, and they really are. The streets around our commentary position here are thronging with people. They are ready to give all of these athletes a mammoth reception. We've got a view from an elevated position of the last 250 metres, and it's 3 or 4 deep all the way along the last straight. People here in Birmingham have embraced every element of the Commonwealth Games. Some people think, Mara, that they question whether there's a place for a Commonwealth Games in the modern world. But I would argue the size of the crowds we've seen here and the effort and endeavour on the faces of the athletes tells you that the Commonwealth Games is still a very, very important part of the athletic world, and these medals will be absolutely cherished by Kiplangat and the likes of Alphonce Simbu, if indeed they hang on for gold and silver.
Yes, absolutely agree, Rob. And as I was saying earlier, this is exactly the point made just yesterday by Mike Githae, who won the bronze medal in the 1982 Brisbane Commonwealth Games. He said, you know, the standard isn't quite up there with the global championships, but it's a fantastic confidence builder. And he went on to win the London Marathon the following year, having won a fantastic bronze in the Commonwealth Games in Brisbane. So getting on the medal here could be a big stepping stone to further glory for these men. But Kiplangat, if I've done my sums right, Rob, his last 5K split was 14:24, which was way, way faster than he had been going, somewhere around 2:03 pace. Of course, they won't be finishing in 2:03, having run slower than that for the rest of the race, but he's really injected a change of pace.
I mentioned about the crowds here in Victoria Square. There they are, and there he is, closing in on a moment of history for himself, his family and his country. Do you know what I wrote on my notes yesterday? I didn't write he was going to win. That would be a step too far. I just wrote quick learner. He won his first marathon in Istanbul last November, 2:10:18, and then runs in Hamburg and finishes 4th with 2:05:09, and 5 times he's broken 61 minutes for the half marathon. This guy is young in terms of his marathon career. He hasn't run many, but when he has always produced the goods, and that's what he's done here with a massive injection of pace on that last 5K to burn off everyone, including Alphonce Simbu, the World Championship bronze medalist from 5 years ago, who came here with high aspirations of the title. Well, silver's the next best thing, and it would be an upgrade on his 3rd place finish from London. He's still running well, but Kiplangat has already gone round that corner that Simbu is running up to, and our last split had him comfortably ahead of Githae in 3rd, so it's going to be a wonderful run by the Tanzanian. But as things stand at the moment, it won't be good enough for the gold, but he will be on the podium alongside this highly talented youngster. And do you know what I also like, Mara, about Kiplangat? You know, in the old days, when marathon runners came to the fore, the traditional kind of accepted route, as it were, you ran, you earned your money at 5K on the road, on the track, and then 10K on the track, and then you graduated to marathons. He's done that. He's finished in the top 6 in the World Juniors in 2018, but all of a sudden, instead of being a 10,000 metre runner on the track, he's leaving that to Joshua Cheptegei. He's leapt straight up to the marathons 4 years later. So he has done his learning curve on the track, but he's just done it very quickly, and he's gone straight from the junior ranks at 10,000 up to the senior ranks on the roads over 26.2.
Yeah, and he's still only 22 years old. I really like seeing marathon runners, youngsters taking on the marathon early in their careers. And there we see him going around one of those U-turns, negotiating it fairly safely. Does look like he's struggling a little now, heavy legs, but he's got a massive gap. And the younger you start the marathon, as long as you manage to stay injury-free, the better you can be at it, because it takes years of hard training to be world-class. And, you can only race the marathon 2 or 3 times a year, so you need to allow for having bad days.
So he's exiting what we call Centenary Square as Alphonce Simbu comes in. Loping stride that's going to bring him home to the delight of everybody in Dar es Salaam with a Commonwealth silver, you would think. Barring an injury or a sudden attack of cramp, Kiplangat looks like he has got the gold, and this moment of history for Uganda sewn up. And last time we got a visual check, Michael Githae of Kenya was in third. I think he still is. Well, that stride is definitely shortening, and he's hurting. No wonder, though. This has been I think those hills are deceptively tough, aren't they? When I initially looked at the course before we came here to Birmingham, I thought, oh, that's quite a nice, forgiving course. But having seen those hills, having seen the elite wheelchair athletes and the elite men get to grips with those inclines, I think this is a pretty tough circuit.
Yeah, I agree, Rob. When I ran New York, you come into Central Park in the last few miles, and goodness me, those hills hurt. They're not even exactly hills, they're really just undulations. But at this stage in the marathon, any uphill is just so painful. But these men now, they've got big gaps on each other. They really just need to keep the tempo going. So Kiplangat, the leader now through 40k.
Yeah, let's give you when we get an accurate clock, let's give you an idea of his time. I mean, he has noticeably increased his pace over the last 8, 9, 10k or so, but remember they were operating at about 2:10ish for much of the race, thanks to the early pacemaking duties of Liam Adams, who at the last checkpoint was in 5th. His PB, by the way, is 2:10.48. We would love to see the Australian runner PB having grabbed the early initiative by the scruff of the neck, but we're watching the Ugandan Victor Kiplangat close in on a fabulous victory.
So a second place Simbu looks ahead of him. He cannot see the leader, but Simbu's looking pretty comfortable at the moment.
He might get a glimpse of the Ugandan on the other side of the road, possibly. This is just a mere hint as to the level of spectators who've crowded around the finish. This is absolutely brilliant. I mean, there were nowhere near this many on the Gold Coast at the finish line, because again my commentary position was about 50 metres away from the finish. It was good, but there weren't as many as there are here this morning. So Victor Kiplangat going round that hairpin. 3 kilometres to go. 2 miles. 2 miles separates Victor Kiplangat and a piece of sporting history for a proud nation. And I hope Stephen Kiprotich is watching somewhere, the world and Olympic champion 2012 and 2013. There, the two sort of cross. I'm not sure they can see each other with the foliage that's hiding Kiplangat from view. But Simbu now, I guess, Mara, he's fully focused. He probably knows deep down that barring seeing his rival on the ground with an attack of cramp that no one would want to see, he knows that the gold is gone. So his job now is to fully focus on ensuring he stays ahead of Githae here, who's in the bronze medal position, and that he takes the silver for Tanzania.
Yeah, and Githae there taking a glance behindward and then has a big grin on his face. I think he knows bronze is secured. But of course, as we saw in the wheelchair race earlier, it ain't over till it's over. These men just have to keep it together. It's all about damage limitation at this point. And he's sticking very closely to the blue line there, just checking his watch, seeing how many more minutes of running to go. I said the leader was through 40k. He wasn't quite there, but as soon as we have that official split, we'll bring it to you. And the Ugandan in the lead. Of course, last time, silver medal, Solomon Mutai from Uganda won the silver medal on the Gold Coast.
I give the guy on the right about 50 metres.
Just a reminder that these men run at somewhere just around 3 minutes per kilometre or a bit outside. So good on you if you can keep up with them at that speed.
And quite rightly, Victor Kiplangat ignoring those trying to run alongside. Fully focused on the last 7 or 8 minutes of running. to get this job done. This has been a perfectly timed drive towards the line. He'll have the information. He knows he's a long way clear. So Kiplangat's on his way. He can taste glory. Last quick reminder of the elite women before we focus on the finish of the men. Then you'll see all of the rest of the elite women's race. All of them were running together in a very tight group, and then they spread out a little bit just to get to that drink station, but that can be a little bit deceptive. One or two like to get off the front, and good to see Johannes there sharing a drink. Johannes probably joint favourite for this one, four-time Olympian for Namibia. Sinead Driver's still there. Nanette Chebet, Eloise Wellings. So many times the Australian has finished just off the podium in the Com Games with the 5 and the 10,000 metres. Be great from a neutral's point of view to see her in the shake-up for a bronze. But Johannes is the defending champion, and that's a very, very talented big group running together with around about half an hour. Stenson's still in there as well. I wasn't sure whether the third Australian was in that group, but she is. She's bidding for history, hoping to become the first woman to win 3 medals after her 2 bronze finishes in 14 and 18. One of the athletes just in the background there actually coming to a stop to get their drink. It's Matanga who was setting the pace there. Paulina Matanga, who set a half marathon PB of 69 minutes back in March. So all the main protagonists are right there in the elite women's race. We will give that our undivided attention once we've wrapped up the 1, 2, 3 for the men. And what a fabulous, fabulous performance this is turning out to be for Kiplangat, Mara.
Certainly is. Through 40k now, officially 2:02.57 for the leader. I made that split 15:48, so he has slowed, but he can certainly afford to because he has a huge lead on the second placed athlete Simbu from Tanzania, and there he is. So Simbu just trying to keep it together in these final stages. Just a few more minutes to go, and they're running through the jewellery quarter now, where the medals for these Commonwealth Games were designed and made.
And just listen to the reception Simbu's getting here as he ekes out the last few kilometres that separate him from a Commonwealth silver.
So 1:30 there, the gap between gold and silver.
I just saw a Finnish flag in the background there. Fans of distance running. Some great performances from them in the Olympic arena. Mind cast back to Lasse Viren with his double-double in 1972 and 1976. So all sorts of nations taking joy and excitement from these races, not just those who are eligible to compete. Now this is brilliant from Kiplangat, it really is. I mean, that he's taken a huge amount out of Simbu in the last sort of 5 or 6k. He's upped the tempo, he's turned the screw, and absolutely nobody could live with him.
Yeah, that split from 30 to 35k, Rob, that's where he really did the damage. Got a gap on Simbu and he's piled on the pressure. He has slowed since, but when you've got this bigger gap, and there we see the gap to Githae in 3rd place, another minute or so behind the silver medal. So into the very final few minutes, and Kiplangat looking pretty comfortable.
Oh, he's closing in on a huge moment for Uganda. Have you been to Uganda?
I haven't, no, but I know that, you know, distance running is really big there. Of course, they had the Olympic champion Kiplangat back in 2012. Ugandans have been on the medal podium at these Commonwealth Games men's marathons a number of times.
They have, but they've never tasted gold. It's a brilliant country if ever you get the chance to visit. A fantastic place to go for a run. Incredible scenery, very friendly people. I've always had a good time. One of my favourite countries in the world, Uganda. And they will be so excited over this potential gold here for Victor Kiplangat, becoming a powerhouse in their own right in the battle for East African dominance. We've kind of seen it as a two-way rivalry between Kenya and Ethiopia, and although the Ugandans don't quite have the strength and depth of Kenya and Ethiopia yet, with the likes of Joshua Cheptegei and Jacob Kiplimo, Oscar Chilimo got himself on the podium for the 5,000 in Eugene. We were both there, Mara. Great performances, so medals from the Ugandan men in the 10 and the 5,000, and a gold, it looks like, here in the Commonwealth Marathon, as it looks like silver for Alphonce Simbu of Tanzania. So the Ugandans all over the country will be proud of their man, as they will be in Dar es Salaam and all across Tanzania, continuing their rich history of Commonwealth medalists, following in the footsteps of the champion Chihanga from 78 and the winner Nali in 02, and Ramadani getting a medal in 06, and Ikanga, part of that fabulous duel with Di Castella in 1982. The Tanzanians have provided fabulous athletes for the Commonwealth Marathon for decades, and it looks like Alphonce Felix Simbu is the latest in a long line. Oh, now, has he gone the wrong way there? He's just being told, he just stopped momentarily there. He was on the wrong side of the carriageway and was just told to turn round. So a little moment of drama for Kiplangat. There was an official alongside him on a bike, just helping him to make that correction. He just went on the wrong side of the carriageway, but he does have a minute and a half, and it won't cost him the title. But it just shows you, Mara, full concentration required right the way up to the finish.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's back on the blue line, so he's okay now. But we've seen this before in marathon races. You know, in Boston recently, in the wheelchair race, Marcel Hoog followed the lead car as it peeled off just before the finish, but Kiplangat now comfortably. Meanwhile, Liam Adams is in 4th place, some 30 seconds or so behind Githae.
I tell you what I thought was quite lucky there was that he didn't get a sudden attack of cramp, because he came to a complete stop. And anybody who's run a marathon will tell you, as soon as you stop, your body starts doing strange things, and he's just about got the full distance in his legs. So that could have been a really, really wobbly moment there for Victor Kiplangat, but fortunately the legs held good. The official told him the mistake, and he turned around, and he is back on track once more to make history for his country.
So as we approach 2 hours 10 on the clock, we're expecting to see Kiplangat come round the corner for the final turn at any moment.
So many people around our commentary position. There are thousands here. It really is going to be a guard of honour, full marks to the public of Birmingham for turning out in such large numbers. You don't even see crowds this big for the end of the huge city marathons. And now at last, listen to the noise. Just take a moment to listen to this. An incredible reception beckons an incredible athlete. No Ugandan man has ever won this title. Stephen Kiprotich brought glory in the marathon at the Olympics in London in 2012, and then at the World Championship the following year for Uganda. But Victor Kiplangat has run an absolutely masterful race, and he is going to make history here for a proud East African nation. All along the Ugandan roads they will be celebrating. What a moment for Uganda. What a moment for Victor Kiplangat. Their first champion in the Commonwealth Marathon, and he did it in style. He has absolutely nothing left. That was the performance of a lifetime from the 22-year-old. What a way to seal gold. Just superb. And what an ovation from the Birmingham crowd. Sensational win. And there's the image that will be on the front page of all the newspapers across Uganda tomorrow. Victor Kiplangat is the Commonwealth champion. And the crowds respond once more, banging the boards at the side of the course. This is a huge number of spectators greeting the Tanzanian who's about to seal silver. A great run from Alphonce Felix Simbu. It was not to be the title, but the World Championship bronze medalist is going to upgrade to Commonwealth silver. And again, listen to the noise for the East African. A huge reception. Simbu is the silver medalist. A masterful race from him as well. He lived with the pace of Kiplangat for as long as he possibly could. And another East African nation on the podium. Look at Liam Adams in the distance, desperately sprinting, desperately trying to turn fourth into third. But the late addition to the lineup, Michael Githae, is going to hang on to the bronze. He is absolutely exhausted. He's given it everything, and he is rewarded with third place on the podium. 3 East African nations sharing gold, silver and bronze, and full credit to Liam Adams. He has run his heart out for Australia. It's not to be a medal, but he will take huge pride back to his nation. Jonathan completing career, loping his way to 5th place, just in the distance. Honestly, I can't remember support like this at the end of a marathon for many years. The Birmingham crowd have done a sensational job. And it's Jonathan completing career who rounds off our top 5. The time is irrelevant, it's just outside 2:14. This is about heart, this is about gold, silver and bronze and places. It's not about the times. That was a brilliant race and a fabulous top 5. That was an absolute treat for all of us to watch and for everyone in the crowd to see.
Yeah, brilliant finish there, Rob, and Liam Adams almost got onto the medal podium after leading for such a long way. But many congratulations to Kiplangat, the 22-year-old. And he could afford to have a little celebration as he approached the finish line. He made a massive improvement to 2:05 earlier this year. Just take